Tonight, we're going to be discussing part 2 of the world control by the Rothschilds. Who controls the world? The Rothschild family. With the Rothschilds, we have the Rockefellers, as I was discussing, and then we have J.P. Morgan Chase and the likes. I just want to do one thing on here and we'll be good to go. I'm getting this up and on and then we'll be good to go. I apologize, the other one ran out, got kicked out. It was because of my Wi-Fi, so I apologize about that. And I am just now fixing something else. And I'm cutting off the comments on here, guys, that are on here. Hi, guys. How are you? You can comment on Facebook. That's fine. Hi, guys. Just so you know, I'm going to shut off the comments on here, just so you know that, okay? Hi, Laura. How are you? It's nothing against you guys in here. I just don't want to have, any BS going on here. So, just so you know that. Don't get, you can comment on Facebook. Anyway, I got cut off before because of the Wi-Fi signal. So, from the future, I'm going to be using a booster just in case so I can shoot from anywhere I am. If I'm not in the studio and things that we're creating now. That way, there's not a problem. I just want to make sure this is keyed in. I'll edit this piece out of this in the beginning when I put it up on YouTube, and we can go from there. Okay, we're good. Now I can put your comments up on Facebook, and we're good. Now I can see you guys. All right. So, as I stated in my first show, I was very deep into the Rothschilds, and I want to make something clear because when you talk about Jews and you talk about Zionists and Zionism, it's two different things, and I don't want my Jewish friends to take offense to this. It's because the Rothschilds have been able to give the public perception that Zionism equals Jewish people, and it does not. Rothschilds and the political creed introduced into the House of Rothschild created Zionism, thus Zionists. And the Zionists are not the ones, that is the goals of the Illuminati, so to speak, the name you want to call them, the original name of it. And they're largely controlled by the Rothschilds. There are, when you think of Zionism, most people think of Jewish people, and when in fact that's not the case. When you think of Israel, they think of Jewish people, which is correct. That's understandable given the propaganda that's been put out there, but it's seriously misleading because Zionism means Rothschild, just as Israel in certain senses means Rothschild, but it's not. The extraordinary number of Zionists in key positions that are around the globe are looking to manipulate the good Jews and the good people that can get along with their Muslim neighbors and with the rest of the world. So there's two different things going on here, and I want that to be very clear. And thus, as I was going to go back into where I left off in my first video, a significant number of Jewish people, meaning a large population of the Jewish people, are not Zionists and oppose the appalling creed of Zionism. These include Christian Zionists as well, and even Obama's vice president, our vice president, Joe Biden, who told Israeli television, he says, "I'm not a Zionist." I mean, in the pack, you can Google that. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist, is his exact words. And how can it be racial than a political movement? This is one of his comments. And I'm going to get into very shortly where you get John McCain and why he's very dangerous and attached to Joe Lieberman and John McCain is a Zionist, and he is a warmonger. He is, if it was up to him, we would be at war right now, or would have been at war and would have been over with against them. But Iran and Russia, and this is where you saw him yesterday, or excuse me, yesterday, in the Senate hearings, talking about going to war with Russia over this very fake and false flag that Russia interfered with our elections, when in fact they have not. This is a big lie. This is a big false flag, and it is huge. It's probably one of the best and biggest in American history, this Russian hacking and interfering with the elections, up there with 9/11. I'm a factualist. I look at facts, I take common sense and put it together, and when you do your deep research on this, it all comes together. It makes a lot of sense. So let me go back to, we were discussing the Council of Foreign Affairs, and that the Council of Foreign Affairs is really the shadow government that is out there. And they control, for the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and J.P. Morgan and the rest of the other Bilderberg and the rest, that is the shadow government, not just in the United States, but all around the world. All controlled, again, back up to Lord Rothschild himself. And I left off in the last one about Woodrow Wilson, as I was giving you the history of the Federal Reserve and our banking system and how it ties into all of them. What the Federal Reserve is that it loans enormous sums to the government via the Federal Reserve. A method to repay the debt is our income tax system, and an escape from taxation for the wealthy, which is the foundations that they create. In other words, like the Clinton Foundation and the likes, and they do not pay taxes. And the Rockefeller Foundation and the rest, okay? All that remained was an excuse to borrow money when they created this system. By some happy coincidence, as I stated in my first, in 1914, World War I began. The British sucked us in to World War I with a promise to turn over Palestine, which is now Israel, to the Jews and Rothschild. That was Rothschild's propaganda to get and create Israel. And we agreed, and we got into World War I, and then from World War I, we got into World War II. As I stated, and the German people got duped, and then came Hitler, okay? And Rothschild was behind Hitler as well. So was at that time then the Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan Chase, and the likes. And the German people got duped because they had no idea. They had no idea what was going on. Trust what I tell you. They had no idea what was going on, and then you saw Hitler doing this with Auschwitz and the like, horrible, horrible atrocities to the Jewish people. And Rothschild himself, because he may be Jewish, but he's a Zionist. There's a difference between being Jewish and a Zionist. And this hate to do this was extreme. I mean, it's huge. And the power with this. So I'm going to go back into, with the Council of Foreign Relations, how this became and where we're at. So World War I began, and after World War I, America's debt rose from $1 billion to $25 billion. Woodrow Wilson was elected president in 1913, beating incumbent William Howard Taft, who had vowed to veto legislation establishing a central bank. Taft, that was a fixed election back then, just so you know that. That's a whole different story, but that election was fixed because if Taft got in, he was going to stop the centralization of banking. To divide the Republican vote and elect the relatively unknown Wilson, J.P. Morgan and company poured money into the candidacy of Teddy Roosevelt and his Progressive Party. So J.P. Morgan was behind funding that of Teddy Roosevelt. According to an eyewitness, Wilson was brought to the Democratic Party headquarters in 1912 by Bernard Baruch, a wealthy banker. Baruch, I apologize. He received an indoctrination course from those he met, and in return agreed, if elected, to support the projected Federal Reserve and the income tax. and listen to advice in case of war in Europe and on the composition of his cabinet. So see, the history of control in America goes back all the way back to the beginning and the inception, and how the Democratic Party continually was controlled by the Zionists, and that is that of the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan Chase, and the likes. And we have it still to this day. Now you see other names in there like George Soros and the like, who is a Hungarian Jew who is behind that of color revolutions and the like, backing Hillary Clinton and more. But see, and Hillary Clinton is a Zionist as well, but she also is very close to playing the other side, and so is Barack Obama. And you're having some very serious disturbances happen between Muslims and Zionists and Jews and the like. Wilson's top advisor during his two terms, was a man named Colonel Edward M. House. House biographer Charles Seymour called him the unseen guardian angel of the Federal Reserve Act, helping to guide it through Congress. Another biographer wrote that the House believed the Constitution, product of the 18th century mind, was thoroughly outdated, that the country would be better off if the Constitution could be scrapped and rewritten. House wrote a book entitled Philip Drew, D-R-U, Administrator, published anonymously in 1912. The hero, Philip Drew, rules America and introduces radical changes such as graduated income tax, a central bank, and a League of Nations. Sound familiar? League of Nations, United Nations. Central bank, Federal Reserve. Income tax, we have. World War I, and we got sucked into World War I, as I stated, and it was a big, all orchestrated by the Rothschilds. And it left Germany in bits and very bitter, and they were duped. World War I produced both a large national debt, as I stated, and huge profits for those who had backed Wilson. Baruch was appointed head of the War Industry Board, where he exercised dictatorial power over the national economy. He and Rockefellers were reported to have earned over $200 million back then during World War I. Wilson backer Cleveland Dodge sold munitions to the Allies, while J.P. Morgan loaned them hundreds of millions with the protection of U.S. entry into the war. So understand this. Since the beginning of our country and thereafter, from World War I and the likes, this is where you have the military-industrial complex and the likes thereof, to create war, to create profit, to control international currency, and to control the people, all orchestrated and put in place while people believed it was for other reasons when in fact it was not. It's like truly now living in, finding out you've lived all these years in the Matrix. It's one of the best ways to put it, because everything that's been before you has really been a lie, to manipulate, to control, and to feed these Satanists, and they are Satanists. The Rothschilds and that, they're not, these are not, then there are Christian Zionists as well. And you're seeing some of this come out to play in certain things that have been leaked by WikiLeaks and the like recently. While profit was certainly a motive, the war was a useful way to justify the notion of world government. William Hoare reveals in Architects of Conspiracy, great book by the way, that during the 1950s government investigations examining the records of Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. That's another one. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace is another one of these. A longtime promoter of globalism found that several years before the outbreak of World War I, the Carnegie trustees were planning to involve the U.S. in a general war to set the stage for world government. So they've been using war to set the stage for world government for a long time. And you're just seeing even more, and this has been going into play, for decades now. Now you see it coming to light, and I believe because of the internet and our technology, people are able to educate themselves and get the information out there to educate people, and thus they're being exposed. And when they're being exposed, you can stop them and bring this globalism to an end, because this is all about power, greed, control, and the people of our statue are nothing. We're nothing to them. We're simply, big pawns in a very big chess game. The main obstacle was that Americans did not want any involvement at that time in European wars, which we still don't. Some kind of incident such as here. You ready? We talk about false flags today, and people say, what's a false flag? Some kind of incident, i.e. we'll say today like a terrorist attack, such as the explosion of the battleship Maine back then, which provoked the Spanish-American War, would have to be provided as provocation. You have to provoke a war. You have to provoke a bad guy. So, like the battleship Maine that happened with the Spanish-American War, you have this that provoked that war. This occurred when Louisiana, carrying 128 Americans on board, was sunk by a German submarine, and an anti-German sentiment was aroused. When war was declared, U.S. propaganda portrayed all Germans as Huns and fanged serpents, and all Americans opposing the war as traitors. Now let's get into, real quickly today, let's get into Russia. We are now doing the same exact thing back then that we did back then, right now. We're deeming the Russians for interfering with our elections, allegedly interfering with our elections, the electoral process, and for being hacked. It is again a propaganda, and that as some kind of incident to provoke war with Russia. And that is Obama's idea and bottom line. And don't kid yourself, there's 16 days left. After hearing John McCain yesterday, who is a true Zionist, and I'm going to get into this, ties with Joe Lieberman, who is the front man for the Rothschilds in the United States, and so is John McCain. Don't kid yourself that they won't do it, because now I'm giving you history where they've done it over and over and over again. They don't want Donald Trump in power. Donald Trump does not follow this blueprint. He can't be bought. He has nothing to do with the Rothschilds, so to speak. And I believe you saw a recent meeting by Henry Kissinger, who is also a major globalist, to his office after a trip to China as a way to talk to Donald Trump and say, hey, listen, we need to get you on board on this, or you're going to have problems and the like. And probably Trump played one of his normal moves and just said, okay, whatever, and let it be for that. What was not relevant at the time, however, was that the Lusitania was transporting war munitions to England, making it a legitimate target for the Germans. Even so, they had to take out large ads in New York papers asking the Americans not to take passage on the ship. So they warned the Americans, and this is where you come into false flags, and you can go into back to 9/11. You can go back into lots of incidences where they warn you. Did they not warn us now before terrorist attacks happen? Alleged ones. They say, oh, by the way, we got a terrorist threat from so-and-so that maybe people are going to be driving cars through, heavily visited places through the United States. Back then, they took out ads in newspapers to warn Americans not to take passage on this particular ship that they were setting up as a false flag because they were going to blow it out of the water, and that way. The evidence seems to point to a deliberate plan, i.e. false flag, to have the ship sunk by the Germans, and thus sucked into World War I. Colin Simpson, author of the Lusitania, wrote that Winston Churchill, head of the British Admiralty during the war, had ordered a report to predict the political impact if a passenger ship carrying Americans was sunk. Now, follow this. I want you to follow this. He ordered a report to predict what political impact it would be from the American people if a passenger ship carrying Americans was sunk. So they're preparing for the false flag. They want to see how the American people are going to react, and that's why you'll see a lot of tests for false flags in our country, like that of the release of, we'll say, a virus. Okay, a good example. They let it happen for a little bit. They see how the American people are going to respond. They see what's going to take place. They will do a small terrorist attack, and they will see how that goes over and plays, and they see what goes on. And they do studies all the time to see what's going to impact the American people the most and how we can control the American people the most and how they're going to react thereto. And thus they come up with these plans to enact incidents, to enact war, and this is where you get false flags. 9/11 was completely a false flag. Different whole story, but it was a and after listening to me with this, I hope a lot of you did doubt possibly that 9/11 was not. Understand that it was. German naval codes had been broken by the British, who knew approximately where all U-boats near the British Isles were located. According to Simpson, Commander Joseph Kenworthy of the British Naval Intelligence stated, the Lusitania was deliberately sent at slow speed into an area where a U-boat was known to be waiting. Escorts withdrawn. Thus, even though Wilson had been re-elected in 1916 with the slogan, "He kept us out of war," America soon found itself fighting a European war based on this setup, this false flag. So we got sucked into the war, and this is not conspiracy, this is fact, because an American ship was blown out of the water by a German U-boat, even though it was deliberately and wantonly sent in there, and American lives were killed and taken. This is the mentality of the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan, and thus the Zionists. Just like John McCain, as you hear, and we should go to war here, go to war there. And I got a lot to say about John McCain, but I'm going to get to the point. So let's look at it this way. Wilson was reelected in 1916, and then, for the slogan, "He kept us out of war," but yet then Wilson put us to war with a false flag. Colonel House had already negotiated a secret agreement with England committing the U.S. to the conflict. And that's where I brought you into about the Rothschilds guaranteeing them Palestine. It seems the American public had very little say in the matter. With the end of the war and the Versailles Treaty, which required severe war reparations from Germany, the way was paved for a leader in Germany such as Hitler. Get it? All played out, all planned. Wilson brought to the Paris Peace Conference his famous 14 points, with point 14 being a proposal for a generation association of nations, i.e., I give you the UN, which was to be the first step towards the goal of one world government, the League of Nations. All falsely brought in to create and start the beginning of control of the world government that we now have, that is much more rampant, and of the likes. Wilson's official biographer, Ray Stannard Baker, revealed that the League was not Wilson's idea. Not a single idea in the covenant of the League was original with the President. Colonel House was the author of the covenant, and Wilson had merely rewritten it to conform to his own phraseology. The League of Nations was established, but it and the plan for world government eventually failed because the U.S. Senate would not ratify the Versailles Treaty. So now, this is how people get involved to stop this. Because when the American public joins and stands up and goes and fights for its freedom and its rights, thus through its senators and congressmen, and hits them hard at the right times for the right purposes, we can affect and change the globalist plan. That's just one of the ways. Pat Robertson, the author of The New World Order, states that Colonel House, along with other internationalists, realized that America would not join any scheme for world government without a change in public opinion. So even back in the 1900s, the Americans would not stand for one world government. As I would probably say, half of America today, or maybe half or maybe 3/4 of Americans today would not. But when you look at the popular vote for Hillary Clinton, maybe the other half certainly would. And as you know from her emails that were leaked, she's into complete globalization because she is a Zionist. She is a complete Zionist. Thus, that of tied to the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan, George Soros. After a series of meetings, it was decided that the Institute of International Affairs, with two branches in the United States and England, would be formed. The British branch became known as the Royal Institute of International Affairs, with leadership provided by members of the Round Table. Begun in the late 1800s by Cecil Rhodes, the Round Table aimed to federate the English-speaking people of the world and bring it under their rule. The Council of Foreign Relations, which we still have today, which is the shadow government that that people speak about and want to know who that is. The Council of Foreign Relations was incorporated as the American branch in New York on July 29, 1921. Founding members included Colonel House, and as such, potentates of international banking as J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, Paul Warburg, the Warburg family of Germany. That's another whole show I'm going to do. Otto Kahn, another family. Jacob Schiff, a major family down right below the Rothschilds, a Schiff family, the same clique which had engineered the establishment of the Federal Reserve System, according to Gary Allen in the October 1972 issue of American Opinion. So now, you have complete infiltration. We have the Federal Reserve. We have the Council of Foreign Relations, which then, as we go in to, and all controlled by the bankers, all controlled by the elite, and there's more. There's a total of like 13 commanding families in the world, and they do govern the world. And like I say to you, people like Bill Gates and the rest, these people may be billionaires, but these people have nothing close to the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan is probably the least of the wealthiest out of these top three families. The founding president of the CFR was John W. Davis, J.P. Morgan's personal attorney, while the vice president was Paul Cravath, also representing the Morgan interest. Professor Carroll Quigley characterized the CFR as a front group for J.P. Morgan and Company in association with a very small American Round Table group. Over time, Morgan influence was lost to the Rockefellers, who found that one world government fit their philosophy of business as well, and John D. Rockefeller Sr. had said, competition is a sin. A global monopoly fit their needs as they grew internationally. And as I stated earlier, the Rothschilds, who wanted to get into oil, and they are the Jewish Zionists, merged and got in, came up with a plan to merge and get in with the Rockefellers, who are the Gentiles, i.e. still the Christian Zionists. And Rockefeller had Standard Oil, which was a major oil company at that time, and the Rothschilds and Rockefellers got together to form this. And now they had control of everything. And the Rothschilds controlled the gold market still to this day around the world. And as I stated in my first video, they are, they have subterranean vaults. This is not conspiracy. Loaded with gold. They hold the most gold. They're worth over $500 trillion. The reason why they're not listed on Forbes, as I stated, is because there's so many different branches of the Rothschild family and their Swiss banking and the like, and the Bank of England. They used to run the England's Royal Mint. They do not anymore, but they still have their hands in that, and they still control the gold every day, along with how the Federal Reserve controls the interest rates and thus the fluctuation of everything that we do. Quote again from Rockefeller, competition is a sin. We all know competition breeds success for all of us in business or an entrepreneur or the likes, for small business in the United States as well as large companies. Competition does breed success. Rockefeller says it breeds sin. Global monopolies fit their needs as they grew internationally. So when monopoly is, we'll say Walmart, we'll say Microsoft, and the likes. Anthony Sutton, a research fellow for the Hoover Institute for War, Revolution, and Peace at Stanford University, wrote of this philosophy. While monopoly control of industries was once the objective of J.P. Morgan and J.D. Rockefeller by the late 19th century, the inner sanctums of Wall Street understood the most efficient way to gain an unchallenged monopoly was to go political and make society go to work for the monopolists under the name of public good and public interest. Understand and pay attention to what I'm telling you. I'll say it again, slowly. Wall Street understood the most efficient way to gain an unchallenged monopoly was to go political, make society go to work for the monopolists under the name of public good and public interest. In other words, to dupe you into believing one thing, and that you're working for your freedom and for the brave and for your, to be this great entrepreneur and the American way. At the same time, what you're really doing is feeding this global madness. I know it may be shocking for many people to believe that we really are living in the Matrix. And all these years, people have believed that they are free, and we are not free. We are manipulated, we are used, and we are just chess pieces in the game. However, they need us more than we need them. We don't need them, they need us. And when you wake up and you educate yourself and you know not to play along with their agendas or their propaganda, that's when you begin to win, and that's when they begin to panic, and this is how you stop them. Frederick C. Howe revealed the strategy of using government in a 1906 book, Confessions of a Monopolist. It's a great book, I've read it. These are the rules of big business. Get a monopoly, let society work for you, and remember that the best of all business is politics. And thus you have politics, and these politicians who go to work and come out and tell the world the United, will say the world, but our country, I'll do this for you, we'll make this better for you, we'll do that. And this is nothing to relation to Donald Trump, because he truly is a people's president. Understand this. And this is why they're so scared, and this is why his life is on the line, and this is why you can't even trust anybody around him, because the shadow government does exist, and he's going to have a very hard time. And as you can see already what he's come up against, and what he is coming up against on a daily basis. And just at this Senate hearing, this Senate meeting, you saw John McCain smugly sitting back and asking the head of our CIA and the rest of our branches of intelligence, what should we do? Do you believe we should go to war with Russia as retaliation for this great big lie? This is the same patterns of behavior and acts that have been going on since the 1800s. And you would think, like people think, oh my God, Israel, Palestine just got created for the Jews and this and that, and it was all a manipulation by the Rothschilds on the guarantee for World War I with the British to get the United States sucked in, and the British guaranteed Palestine become a Jewish state. And that war between what's the small part of Palestine as well and what's of Israel has been going on back and forth. And then strangely, and I'll get into that, but you see now how Barack Obama pulled a fast one, which is a complete throw in the thing. And that's why I'm trying to tell you there's other things going on behind the scenes, where you have the Muslims now reaching up for power, to where there's almost like what the CIA does. They show you, they're double agents. So you have the uprising of one power against the Zionists on the other, and they were thought to be Zionists when in fact they're not, and they played into to a very big situation here, and that's why you saw such shock go around the world, especially by Israel and the likes of, like, what did the United States just do? What did Barack Obama just do? And people go, well, what's the big deal? This is why I'm trying to explain to you how big of a deal this is, because they will keep continuing, and they will declare World War III, and they will throw Russia under the bus like they have done Germany, with leading one of our own boats back then into harm's way to knowingly get it blown out of the water to create a war, to suck us in, to create this other whole pattern. And the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers are pulling the strings at the top. And now you have George Soros and the likes doing the same. We truly are living in the matrix, but thus you need to educate yourself to not be a part of this matrix. And if we can get millions of people together to understand this and fight back against globalism and this elite, and not have these propaganda become stop being our everyday life by mainstream media, which, as I explained in my first video, that the Rockefellers bought in the 1800s. Reuters is huge, and then Reuters bought the Associated Press, and the Associated Press is tremendous. They're the ones who send out all the news stories across the globe. They collect them, and then they send them everywhere, and they do their own as well. Then they got into TV, media outlets, and the like. And that's why you saw the New York Times, CNN, and the rest with Clinton smashing Trump and the left, because Trump is not part of this Zionist cult, because that's what it is, the Illuminati. I just want to check Facebook, everybody. So it is still coming in. I don't know where my team is. Don't let these trolls bother you, everybody. And I don't even want to talk about this on my professional TV channel for MFA. This is our channel. I see people on Facebook. I'm wondering where my team is that should be blocking them. And I don't know what he's talking about where I broadcast from. People think they know where I am. And it doesn't matter where I broadcast from, okay? And this is where people just don't get it. And the point is that not just us in America, but people from around the world have been duped, completely duped, to where you're believing one thing when in fact it's another. And it's funny how people talk about where people broadcast from or the likes. Some of the most wealthiest people in the world live out of the nicest hotels in the world. Understand this. And I broadcast, I'm actually at a business, our business facility. So they but that's okay. Point being, and I'm really kind of looking at this. And no, it's a hotel. There's no such thing as really, nobody goes to motels anymore, guys. Okay. I don't know where the volunteers are to vet these people out of here, and I'm wondering where they're not in there to just block them. So, and once again, I say, what if I told you, I'm in a $450 a night hotel room? Does it matter? Does it really matter? Does it matter that, I've owned a home in the Hamptons, a multi-million-dollar home in the ocean in the Hamptons since I was 23? Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. My point being is, don't feed into these people things. And it's not about money, because I've become a guy that I don't care. Materialistic things are bullshit to me. I've been there. Self-made millionaire by 23. These people can't even claim any of that. Now, so it's very, very important to understand the Council on Foreign Relations and where we're at in this. Now, as corporations went international, national monopolies could no longer protect their interests. Okay, so another problem arose. What was needed was a one-world system of government controlled from behind the scenes. This had been the plan since the time of Colonel House, and to implement it, it was necessary to weaken the U.S. politically and economically. During the 1920s, America enjoyed a decade of prosperity fueled by the easy availability of credit. The beginning of credit is in the 20s. That wonderful thing we love, credit cards, and loans to buy homes and cars and the like. Between 1923 and 1929, the Federal Reserve expanded the money supply by 62%. Then, the stock market crashed, and that was also, they do it. Stock market, they force the stock market to crash, and then they can incite, which I'm going to get into, more protections allegedly by the government to protect the people and make you feel more comfortable with the government. When the 1929 stock market crashed, many small investors were ruined, but not insiders, because they knew it was coming, just like in any of our crashes. In March of 29, Paul Warburg issued a tip to the crash that the crash was coming, and I'm going to do a show on the Warburg family. That's another massive family up there with the Rothschild. And the largest investors got out of the market, according to Allen and Abraham in Non-Dare Call It a Conspiracy. So, just like any of our deals today in the stock market, just like in 2008, this is, if you're a smart investor, I'm going to teach you. If you're an investor, I'm going to teach you something. Always watch what big investors do, like the Warren Buffetts. Watch what the Warren Buffetts do. Watch what Bill Gates does. Watch what other and major corporations do as well. But I'm talking about the private sector of, I'm talking about watch them even a year before. I'll give you an example. In the 2008 crash, Warren Buffett previously, before that, started to buy up, as well as several other big investors, started to buy up railroad stock and buy railroads. And you'd say, why would they be buying railroads? Why would we need railroads? The problem is that they didn't foresee what they were planning was the big crash of 2008, and trucking then would be very expensive. And trucking became very expensive, and railway delivery became the cheaper way to ship materials, and same thing than that of aircraft. So they profited hugely by that going to and they do this also with gas. If they increase the price of gas and petroleum, and they do deliberately do this, you then end up with, you'll see the same thing. They will go, trucks are not going to be running on the road as much. People are not going to be shipping by truck because it's expensive. Then they ship by rail. But this is part of the thing. Buffett started to buy up tons of railroads, and that's what he's done. Bill Gates, of the past, we'll say 8 to 10 years, has been buying up silver mines. Lots of silver mines, more than anything else. Silver, 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 silver. Silver is like the hidden diamond in the rough, so to speak, and will be. And you will see something hugely spike with silver shortly. It's a whole other show. But like the Rothschilds control the gold price in the world, they can decrease it and increase it at any time. And the Rothschilds own they own the largest supply of gold in the world, next to China, and then Russia. And China has been buying up the gold, and thus going against who? The Zionists. China opened up its own World Bank, and they are against the Zionists. They are against the Rothschilds. They have their own World Bank, and they are the first bank since our bank and that of Gaddafi, who started to print gold certificated money. But China's done this on a massive scale now with their own World Bank, and this is upsetting the world powers that be with the globalists. China has its own internet. You can't get into its internet. China has separated itself from the rest of the world, and they also know that they're going to be targeted. But there's much more to the China story than that. My point being, though, is now you have another faction getting involved in this, and China's been buying up all the gold mines and minerals and of that around the globe for a very long period of time, and they have control of a lot of the gold on the planet, especially down in South America and the likes, and in Africa, as well as oil. While the world was paying attention to doing all this, and the greed and the powerful were doing this, an email came over. China's been buying up, where we get this, the sources, the actual sources themselves, strip mines, gold mines, diamond mines, you name it, platinum. None dare call it a conspiracy. Everything is a conspiracy. Now it's fake news. First everything was a conspiracy, now it's fake news. And the fake news is part of this as well, to what's happening now with his agenda, or it's a conspiracy theorist. They were saying that Donald Trump was a conspiracy theorist when he first started to run and saying things, and then continued that on, and then it went into fake news. But he was always a conspiracy theorist. He talked to Alex Jones on his show, so that made him a conspiracy theorist. Everybody's deemed a conspiracy theorist who comes out and tells the truth, and thus they, disintegrate your your public profile, and just like they do to me. Anybody who speaks the truth, they're going to come after, and I've stood up to public corruption and those that are corrupt, and they know who they are, and I have done it, and it will be out in my book in grave detail and my series about it. So, with their fortunes intact, they were able to buy companies for a fraction of their worth. Get it? It drops, they cause the problems for the companies, then they step in and they buy, it's like a hostile takeover. They'll come in and buy it for much less than it's worth, and then they bring it back up again. Shares that had sold for $1 might now cost a nickel, and the buying power and wealth of the rich increased enormously at that time. Louis McFadden, chairman of the House Banking Committee, declared it was not accidental. It was a carefully contrived occurrence. The international bankers sought to bring about a condition of despair here so that they might emerge as rulers of us all. Get it? Create the big situation. I'll give you Syria. Again, I'll use that as an example, but that's not a financial situation. That's a war situation to where they created a false flag, making it saying that Bashar al-Assad gassed his own people, making him out to be a monster and a dictator. And I'm not saying he's not a dictator, but I'm saying he did not gas his own people, and factually this is correct. We, through the United States, with other factions, Saudi Arabia, Mossad, and the like, using Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation as the front to rob, rip, and pillage that of Muammar Gaddafi, including that of his murder, stripped him of billions of dollars that he had, billions in gold, stripped him of his resources through that of private companies that they had set up, and also at the same time killed Ambassador Stevens and two top military special forces got killed as well with the Benghazi incident, when in fact that was all set up, pre-planned, laid out to just destroy Gaddafi and Libya and strip it of its resources parasitically for the elite. And innocent people get killed in the interim, and to them, it does not matter. We are the pawns in this big game, and the only way to stop being pawns is to not play along, and is to not feed into the propaganda and the bullshit. Create despair, then the people become dependent on the government. And this is what you've seen over Barack Obama's thing. It started even with Bush and the likes. These dynasties of the Bush dynasty, the Clinton dynasty, the Obama dynasty, all puppets, all carrying out for these. And over Obama, you saw that of socialism come into complete, fruition. Curtis Dahl, son-in-law of FDR, and a syndicate manager for Lehman Brothers, as we all know, from that, an investment firm, was on the New York Stock Exchange floor for the day of the crash. FDR himself was. In FDR, My Exploited Father-in-Law, it's a great book, he states it was the calculated shearing of the public by the world money powers, triggered by the planned sudden shortage of call money in the New York market. They planned it, and that brought about the 1929 crash. Totally planned, totally set up, but to the world, it was something totally different. Martha Stewart went to jail and was made an example of for something that's been going on and being done by everybody within, not everybody, but a majority of big players within the stock market. They made an example of her when she's done something that everybody in that sector of that caliber does on a regular basis, and they still do it to this day. And who bailed out in 2008 all these major players? The U.S. government. And where did the U.S. government get the money from? The Federal Reserve. So in the end, no one lost. They all won, because even on the bad paper that came from the mortgage collapse and the collapse in 2008, they made more money on the bad paper than they did the good money paper. And then poor Americans suffered and lost their homes, lost everything that they had to claim bankruptcy, was out of work. It was one of the worst things, all planned, while they sat back and laughed and said, ha ha, look, we just did it again. Because why? Americans fell into one of the biggest things, and it's been happening since the inception here. Greed. Materialistic things, because that's what they pump out every day. I gotta have this fancy car, I gotta have this house on this address, I gotta have these clothes, I gotta have this, I gotta have that. And they fall in, they get credit cards, they charge them up, the banks make money off of you, you buy this house that you can't even afford to furnish, and I've seen it myself as a major builder. I built many big homes for people, multi-million dollar homes, and the like, and even smaller ones as well. They had to have the address, they had to have the house, and then I would even go back in there 6, 12 months later to see them and follow up, whatever. They didn't even hardly have any furniture. They couldn't afford furniture, but they had the fancy car in the driveway and the house and the address, and were up to here in debt, all to be better than the Joneses. Why? Because they fed into this system that has already been created and fed every day for Americans to do just that. Just play right along and keep making them wealthier and wealthier and wealthier and more control as they take more of our rights away as well, because that brought about more laws to control that of the bankers having more control over our money, assets, taxes, the like. The crash paved the way for the man Wall Street had groomed for presidency. Wall Street groomed him. FDR. Portrayed as the man of the little people, meaning he was portrayed, FDR, I wasn't alive then, but I've studied this. FDR was like our Trump, so to speak, okay? But Trump's totally different than FDR. Trump has not been groomed, as many are alleging in some videos you'll see on YouTube and the likes on the internet. He's not been groomed for this position. Trump is truly a people's president. And sorry, people are saying the feed is frozen. I'm good here, so I don't know what's going on Facebook. I hope they're not up to their things. I see it popping back up again. Now, I mean, this is just the beginning and the beginning part, so I'm hoping everybody between part 1 and part 2, you're starting to understand how this big smoke and mirrors, big, they are the conspiracy. They call those who tell the story and come out with the truth about this the conspirators, when in fact they are the conspirators. They are the conspiracy themselves. They created it, they know it, and they are thus the conspiracy. The crash paved the way for FDR, portrayed as the man of the little people, as I said. The reality was that Roosevelt's family had been involved in New York banking since the 18th century, if you've done your homework. Frederick Delano, FDR's uncle, served on the original Federal Reserve Board. Get that. FDR's uncle was on the Federal Reserve Banking Board, and FDR attended Groton and Harvard. And guess what? Harvard, Groton, the likes of these schools are all breeding grounds for Zionists, for globalists, and the likes. And some of our most intelligent minds come out of these great universities, and they are groomed. The skull and bones and things of that nature that people, you've seen these, but these are true. They groom. George Bush was one of those. They groomed them. Barack Obama was very much hand-groomed for his position as president, his first senator and then president, by the powers that be. Hillary Clinton is the same and was supposed to be here, and this is why they're doing everything in their power to stop Donald Trump. And let me tell you, we have 16 days left, and after hearing, like I said, that McCain Senate meeting, and our CIA and our investigative branches, our intelligent branches are lying. This is a massive lie. And if you're going to lie big to the people, just like I'm saying, people will buy this. And you just hear it. The Russians did it. The Russians did it. And now they're going to throw Trump under the bus. And McCain threw Trump under the bus when he said about Julian Assange. And he said that Julian Assange, and that's a whole, and I will tell you this, Julian Assange is 100% connected to the Rothschilds and the likes. And I've gone into other videos about that, and if I have time and this is part of this video, I will. If not, I'll do it, another video directly on that, along with some of the more to all of this. FDR attended Groton and Harvard in the 1920s, worked on Wall Street, sitting on the board of directors of 11 different corporations. Dahl wrote of his father-in-law, most of his thoughts, his political ammunition, were carefully manufactured for him and advanced by the CFR, One World Money Group. That's what I'm trying. Anything that was expressed out. Kennedy was totally against this, and this is what got Kennedy killed, okay, amongst a lot of crazy conspiracy theories about Kennedy. I'll be doing a show on that. Brilliantly, he exploded that prepared ammunition in the middle of an unsuspecting target, the American people, and thus paid off and retained his internationalist political support. Taking America off the gold standard in 1934. Here it comes. America was on the gold standard up to 1934. Kennedy wanted to put his back and he even started printing that money. When in fact, and that's one of the main reasons why Kennedy was brutally murdered, assassinated, FDR opened the way to unrestrained money supply expansion, decades of inflation, and credit revenues for the bank. No gold standard, fiat cash. That means cash just printed, nothing to back it. The United States as a government borrows from the Federal Reserve. The people believe at the time, and still even many today, believe the Federal Reserve is a federal bank. They under this guise, on a regular basis, it's the greatest fraud. Huge fraud. He rose gold prices back then from $20 an ounce to $35 an ounce, i.e., and the Rothschilds benefited from this. And FDR and Treasury Secretary Henry Morgenthau Jr., son of founding CFR member, the Council of Foreign Relations, gave international banks huge profits. FDR's most memorable program, the New Deal, could only be financed through heavy borrowing. In effect, those who caused the Depression loaned America the money to recover from it. The Great Depression was a fraud. Then, through the National Recovery Administration, proposed by Bernard Baruch in 1930, they were put in charge of regulating the economy. Wonderful. Wonderful. And while the American people are like, oh, this is our savior, this is the bank, FDR appointed Baruch disciple Hugh Johnson to run the NRA, assisted by CFR member Gerard Swope. With broad powers to regulate wages, prices, and working conditions, it was, as Herbert Hoover wrote in his memoirs, pure fascism, merely a remaking of Mussolini's corporate state. The Supreme Court eventually ruled the NRA unconstitutional, hence why the Supreme Court of the United States and the PICs are so important. That one of the main reasons that Donald Trump got elected is because he would not put these key Zionists and others in Supreme Court positions. The Supreme Court has been, in many instances, a savior to the United States and its laws and thus its Constitution. What if Hillary Clinton would have gotten in, and the PICs not just to replace the one, would have even others who are retiring, and could be up to 4 PICs, and thus control of the United States, and this was the entire plan. The entire plan. Pure fascism, merely a remaking of Mussolini's corporate state. The Supreme Court, as I said, eventually ruled the NRA unconstitutional. During the FDR years, the Council of Foreign Relations captured the political life of the U.S. Besides Treasury Secretary Morgenthau, other CFR members included Secretary of State Edwin Stettinius, War Secretary Henry Stimson, and Assistant Secretary of State Sumner Welles. Since 1934, almost every United States Secretary of State has been a CFR member. Who's our Secretary of State right now? John Kerry. Who is out there for Obama, with the UN, smashed and backdoored Israel, and now coming up with the offer on the table to put in a resolution to make Palestine its own state. John Kerry, puppet. John Kerry, CFR member. And all Secretaries of War of Defense from Henry L. Stimson through Richard Cheney. Richard Cheney. You know who Dick Cheney is under that? The CIA has been under CFR. This is the key. I want you all to please listen to this. And that's why people always go, Scott, you're always talking about the CIA, like you know them all. I know a lot about the CIA, and I'm going to explain to you here why. And I'm just checking to see how we are doing on Facebook. So, Here, pay attention. The CIA has been under Council of Foreign Relations control almost continuously since its creation, starting with Allen Dulles, okay, founding member of the CFR and brother of Secretary of State under President Eisenhower, John Foster Dulles. Allen Dulles had been at the Paris Peace Conference, joined the CFR in 1926, and later became its president. John Kerry on the 15th is set to speak where? In Paris. In Paris, he's going to be, as I stated before, he's going to put on the table that of the resolution to make Palestine an independent state, thus giving a breeding ground for terrorists, their own state, and a smash to Israel. What do you see here? Does anybody see what's happening here? Once, that would have never been thought of. The United States would never do that to Israel because the United States was controlled by the Zionists and controlled thus by the Rothschilds, Council of Foreign Relations, and the like. There's a problem in paradise. It's an underlying, swelling, huge problem in paradise amongst the global elite. John Foster Dulles had been one of Woodrow Wilson's young protégés at the Paris Peace Conference. A founding member of the CFR, he was in law of the Rockefellers, chairman of the board of the Rockefeller Foundation, and board chairman of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Carnegie is another one of these foundations, all controlled. Dale Carnegie was part of the elite as well. In 1940, FDR defeated internationalist Wendell Willkie, who wrote a book entitled One World, and later became a CFR member. Congressman Usher Burdick protested at the time on the floor of the House that Willkie was being financed by J.P. Morgan and the New York utility bankers. Even back then, the same thing we're protesting today, they were protesting back then and trying to point out that there was a one world government and that they were being backed by these globalists to take over and control the United States. So this is nothing new. Back then, polls showed few Republicans favored him, yet the media portrayed him as their Republican candidate. Since that time, nearly all presidential candidates have been CFR members. President Truman, who was not a member, was advised by a group of wise men, all 6 of whom were CFR members, according to Gary Allen. In 1952 and 1956, CFR Adlai Stevenson challenged CFR Eisenhower. In 1960, CFR Kennedy, who was probably killed because he had the courage not to go along with their plans. JFK was a Council of Foreign Relations member. However, he turned. He would not go along with their plans. CFR Nixon. In 1964, the GOP stunned the establishment by nominating its candidate over Nelson Rockefeller. They went over Nelson Rockefeller. Rockefeller and the CFR wing proceeded to picture Barry Goldwater as a dangerous radical. In 1968, CFR Nixon ran against CFR Humphrey, both of them Council of Foreign Relations members. The 1972 contest featured CFR Nixon versus CFR McGovern. CFR candidates for president include George McGovern, Walter Mondale, Edmund Muskie, John Anderson, Lloyd Benston, etc. In 1976, we had Jimmy Carter. Everybody remember Jimmy Carter? Who was a member of the Trilateral Commission created by David Rockefeller and CFR member Brzezinski, with the goal of economic linkage between Japan, Europe, and the United States. Don't get confused CFR with the Trilateral. Trilateral was to get these countries of Japan, Europe, and the United States and managing the world economy as a smooth, peaceful evolution to the global system. All of this, all these, the Trilateral Commission, Council of Foreign Relations, all part of globalism. with the UN, right there. This is really serious stuff, and the history of this and educating you on this is very key so that you understand this. This is huge. So when you say we don't know who to believe anymore, that's right. Believe me, you don't know. We don't know who to believe anymore. I do. I don't believe any of this propaganda BS. I look behind it because I know this, and I continue to educate myself on this. And I will continue to educate the public and the world on it as long as it takes for people to get it. Don't be a puppet anymore. Don't be their chess piece anymore, and they will fail. Not just does America have to rise up, the world needs to rise up, just like they did in Brexit in the UK. Now, we also have had, though his name strangely disappears from the membership list in 1979, CFR director from 1977 to 79, George Bush. And last but not least, CFR member, guess who? Bill Clinton. Council of Foreign Relations, Bill Clinton, and CFR director, George Bush, disappeared off the list, strangely. So his list is not on there. His name is not on the list, strangely. They have all promoted the New World Order controlled by the United Nations. You hear Obama speaking at the United Nations, and now they're openly coming out about it. And just like it's not a big deal anymore. It's just, let's throw it all on the table because it's happening, people. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's why people need to understand this. They're moving this agenda much faster. They're more open about it. They're more direct about it. And they're doing things every day, especially Obama at this moment on behalf of this New World Order, to bring it about. And Hillary Clinton would be doing the same. The New World Order controlled by the United Nations. The problem is that the present United Nations organization is actually the creation of the CFR and is housed on land in Manhattan, donated to it by the family of current CFR chairman David Rockefeller. You know where Rockefeller Center is in New York? Then you have the United Nations building. The UN, the land, everything was donated by David Rockefeller. The original concept for the UN was the outcome of the Informal Agenda Group, formed in 1943 by Secretary of State Cordell Hull. All except Hull were CFR members, and Isaiah Bowman, a founding member of the CFR, originated the idea. The American delegation to the San Francisco meeting that drafted the Charter of the United Nations in 1949 included CFR members Nelson Rockefeller, John Foster Dulles, John McCloy, and CFR members who were communist agents, Harry Dexter White, Owen Latmore, and Secretary General of the Conference, Alger Hiss. In all, the Council set 47 of its members in the United States delegation, effectively controlling the outcome. They control everything. This is the shadow government, and they control everything as we speak now. Since that time, the CFR and its friends in the mass media, largely controlled by CFR members such as Katharine Graham of the Washington Post, Henry Luce of Time, Life magazine, foundations and political groups have lobbied consistently to grant the United Nations more authority and power. Bush and the Gulf War were but one of the latest calls for a new world order. Remember that weapons of mass destruction that our great CIA now and other intelligence communities put together, that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, and this came right after 9/11, that he was this great big threat, when in fact that was another one of America's great lies and deceptions to the American people and the world, to invade Iraq. When Saddam Hussein was actually working with us for many, many years against Iran, and when it was time for Saddam to go, and they wanted to enact the plan that you see in place now, having to do with the takeover of and control of Kuwait, Iraq, Syria, Libya, the like. This entire plan was put into place, having to do with New World Order. Thus, hence, even the creation of ISIL. First, it was the creation of the Taliban, who then their name became ISIS. Now it's ISIL and the like. You see this, why you see Putin against this, because Putin is not for New World Order. Admiral Chess Ward, a member of the CFR for over a decade, became one of its harshest critics, revealing its inner workings in a 1975 book, Kissinger on the Couch. This is a great book and a great read if you can get it. It's called Kissinger on the Couch. This was a member himself, and this book, is so detailed and it is so accurate about the Council on Foreign Relations. Entity states the most powerful cliques in these elitist groups have one objective in common. They want to bring about the surrender of the sovereignty and national independence of the United States. What do you see Obama doing as we speak, and has been doing? Surrendering U.S. rights, thus our sovereignty and national independence, to the UN on a regular basis. Most members, what do you see what Hillary Clinton would do? Beautiful open borders, people streaming, the UN in control, and the like. And the people? Nope. No rights. People think we live in a free America. This is not freedom. Sorry to tell you. This is complete control, and we're just the chess pieces in the game. Most members are one world government ideologists whose long-term goals were officially summed up in September 1961 as State Department Document 7277, adopted by the Nixon administration. I know a lot about Nixon from growing up myself in the mafia in New York. That Nixon was also connected very in depth to the Italian mob. Document 7277, elimination of all armed forces and armaments except those needed to maintain internal order within states and to furnish the United Nations with peace forces. In other words, eliminate military and armaments, i.e. guns, from the people and the last, except those needed to maintain internal order within each state and to furnish the United Nations with peace forces by the time the UN global government, would be so strong no nation could challenge it. And now you have Trump calling up and saying we need to possibly dismantle the UN. Who's right on their radar and their crosshairs of a sniper's rifle? But that, I can assure you, of Donald Trump. Because he is against them. He's against this. He's a people's president. And as I'm saying to you, he's going to come up. This is the forces he's coming up against, and this is big. This is huge. They run the world. But they cannot run the world if the people don't buy their bullshit. Fact. And they can't destroy America any further if Americans finally stand up and know this information and stop feeding into mainstream media fake news, real fake news. Stop feeding into the propaganda. Stop following it around like a sheep. Within the CFR, there exists a much smaller group, but more powerful, made up of Wall Street international bankers and their key agents. Primarily, they want the world banking monopoly from whatever power ends up in control of the global government. The CFR faction is headed by the Rockefeller brothers, according to the inside person of that award, which it is if you go in further into documentation. So there's a much more powerful group within the Council of Foreign Relations. One handles the financial and the rest of the world events. What must be remembered is that this is not some lunatic fringe group. These are members of one of the most powerful private organizations in the world. The people who determine and control America's economic, social, political, and military policies. Members' influence and control extends to leaders in academia, public service, business, and the media. According to the CFR 1993 annual report, which I have up here as well, and newer ones, but I'm going off. So now, we have, as I read to you, almost every U.S. president has been a member of CFR. Donald Trump is not a member of the Council of Foreign Relations, as is totally against one world government. Their founding their founding they describe as, this is how it's described. American participants in the Paris Peace Conference decided that it was time for more private Americans to become familiar with the increasing responsibilities and obligations of the United States. There was a need for an organization able to provide for the continuous study of U.S. foreign police for the benefit of its members, emphasis added, and a wider audience of interested Americans. They sponsored hundreds of programs where members exchanging views with the American and foreign officials and policy experts discuss foreign policy issues, consider international issues of concern to the business community, i.e. corporate business, and affiliated groups of community leaders throughout the United States, and meet with their decision makers. Then you'll throw Agenda 21 into the mix that came after this. This is the and in cooperation with this, and this is what you have. You'll have your Al Sharptons, you'll have your, I'm giving you this example. The CFR states that it is host to many views, advocate of none, and it has no affiliation with the U.S. government. No affiliation at all if you don't count. A council member was elected president of the United States. Dozens of other council colleagues were called to serve in cabinet and sub-cabinet positions, as they describe it in foreign affairs, along with many members of Congress, the Supreme Court, the Joint Chiefs, the Federal Reserve, and many other federal bureaucrats are all part of the CFR. Hence, the shadow government. They are not affiliated with government. They are the government, in effect. One recurring view was stated in the 50th anniversary issue of Foreign Affairs, the official publication of the Council of Foreign Relations. The name of it is called Foreign Affairs. You can Google it. In an article by Kingman Brewster, Jr., entitled Reflections on Our National Purpose. Our purpose should be, according to him, to do away with our nationality, to take some risks in order to invite others to pool their sovereignty with others. In other words, share America's sovereignty and freedoms that we think we have with, and do have in some sense, with the rest of the world, and the entire world be controlled as one big sovereignty, one big order. These risks include disarming, pay attention, these risks include disarming to the point where we would be helpless, us, against the peacekeeping forces of the global UN government. Right now, we have UN forces on our soil for some time, and they've been ramping them up over the past almost 2 years, but more so over the past 6 months. I ran into them myself in Las Vegas while staying at the Rio and covering the debates there, live streaming them out. I was downstairs and I was like, I'm thinking these aren't American soldiers. And no, they weren't gambling, and no, they weren't hanging out in the casino. They just had to put them up there because there was no room. So I asked them, I'm like, these were British and Turkish forces, just so you know. And I asked them, like, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're training here under UN. We've been training here in Nevada for some time. They don't have enough barracks for us. We're in the middle of building more barracks to house us to do this. So they've been putting them up in hotels in Vegas on the Strip, in fact. Okay? So when people say to you that they believe, are there UN forces on our soil? Yes. Are there UN vehicles being manufactured in the United States? Yes. Have we been with Jade Helm and the likes training for martial law? Yes. Because something huge is in the works. And I'm telling you, Donald Trump stepped in the middle of this, unknowingly stepped in the middle of this, truly wanted to be a president for the people, and now he stepped into this world satanic, evil empire bullshit. But it's real. It's extremely real. Today, in other words, I'm going to quote it again. We should happily surrender our sovereignty to the world government in the interest of the world community. Listen to any recent Barack Obama speeches, George Bush's speeches, even Bill Clinton. Today we have the spectacle of SP4 Michael New, a U.S. soldier in Germany who refuses to wear the uniform of the UN. This case is old, but I am bringing it up for a reason. Facing an administrative discharge, he states rightly that he swore an oath to defend the U.S. Constitution, not the United Nations. And this is where you're seeing our soldiers have a problem. They don't want to defend the United Nations. They swore to uphold the U.S. Constitution, because you'll not find U.S. soldiers, if there's martial law or the like carried out on our soil, wanting to hurt and harm other Americans. But UN soldiers will have no problem following orders to do that. Many other Americans have taken the same oath and believe it's their sworn duty to defend the Constitution, as we do and I do and the rest. Since an oath sworn before God must be fulfilled, why else do we swear to tell the truth in our courts or when taking public office? It's a very good point. We swear to tell the truth, help you God. And what's Obama doing? They're even removing God every day. And it's something that as Americans and even citizens around the world should not allow. Religious freedom, no matter what race, creed, color you are, is very, very important to humanity as a whole. It is a crime today to actually believe in God and the oath that was taken, is it? It's a question. Is it a crime these days to actually believe in God and the oath that was taken? Seems like it is. You see many people being arrested, forced into, indicted, going after, directed by our own government. I love how people on my news feed talk about like coconut oil and the rest. I mean, that's nothing to do with world affairs. No disrespect, people. Now, meanwhile, others who attempt to destroy the Constitution or sovereignty are given honors and position. At least they are not hypocrites, only supremely arrogant. We'll talk about even Obama, who has just attempted to destroy our Constitution and has done a good job of it. Because why? The people have allowed it. People, it's funny. All this time, and it takes Donald Trump to go and wake up many Americans to point out the flaws and the corruption within the drain the swamp, so to speak. But this swamp has been there since the early 1800s, and even before that. But how they all got to it started in the 1800s, and almost every war, everything we have, and people sit back and go, "That's impossible." No, this is fact. It's complete fact. Every war we've been in, everything has all been orchestrated. All been orchestrated. All been set up. All been done. In short, the house of world order will have to be built from the bottom up rather than from the top down. An end run around national sovereignty, eroding it piece by piece, will accomplish much more than the old-fashioned assault. In the opinion of Richard N. Gardner, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in Foreign Affairs, April 1974. In other words, and I've been saying this before, I'm quoting this out of some of the books that I picked to do this, and other articles, to bring you the exact facts so people cannot, fact check me. I've been saying for the past year in my videos, this whole plan has been to erode the United States piece by piece from the inside out. And that's what you have found heavily in Barack Obama, even Bill Clinton, George Bush. But more so with Barack Obama, because he was specifically groomed to carry out we'll say the third phase of 4 phases. Okay? And Hillary Clinton was going to be the next puppet to finish this off. But that failed miserably. And I believe they knew at the end it was going to fail miserably, and they threw her under the bus, and that's where you get Comey coming out saying he was reopening the FBI investigation as part of this. They threw her under the bus. They said, you know what, we'll deal with Donald Trump a different way and throw this woman under the bus because she's not well, she's not this, she can't handle what we need her to do, so she's no good anyway, and she's an embarrassment. And they pretty much knew she was going to lose, so why not throw her completely under the bus and do that? Because kid you not, Comey's part of this, the same thing, all part of this. The head of our own FBI, this is what I'm saying. James Warburg, son of CFR founder Paul Warburg and a member of FDR's Brain Trust, testified before Senate Foreign Relations Committee on February 17, 1950. We shall have world government whether or not you like it, by conquest or consent. We shall have world government whether or not you like it, by conquest or consent. In other words, doesn't matter what you do. If we have to, then that is that. Is this an American speaking or a dangerous lunatic? Who is this? Who threatens to conquer America? Barack Obama has thrown American sovereignty to the globalists out of any other CFR, prior president and or globalist and or anyone tied to the Rothschilds and the like. They are a group that actually has the power to do it and is doing it every day, bit by bit. And that's what I'm saying. Every day they're eroding more and more. Donald Trump steps in and says no more erosion, drain the swamp, let's do this. And my concern, and that of others that I talk to, and some of them within the government, some very good sources, and what they see is that they're going to do everything that they can to not allow Donald Trump to do just that. And American people need to understand this, and they need to open their eyes, and they need to stand for their own rights and protect our Constitution and thus our freedoms for our children, our grandchildren, and the future. And it has come to this time. It has come to the time to where we have the opportunity with a people's president to do just that, who's going to need our support. But more importantly, Americans and people around the world need to support each other, spread the information, stand up and help support one another and help each other in times of need. Stand up and protect religious freedoms and that of anything under God, to make the world a safer and better place, and the United States, because it is havoc as we speak, and as I'm proving to you, it has just been all orchestrated. It's a very big, sick game. You have CFR members in mass media, education, and entertainment push their propaganda of humanism and world brotherhood. Let's just look at Hollywood's agenda as we see recently with that of against Donald Trump, from Robert De Niro coming out and the likes, and that, and many, many more. And the ones that in Hollywood that stood up for Trump got, horribly bashed. Hollywood is a way for the Zionists to push through media and entertainment, I should say, through entertainment, that of this the snowflake initiative, the same thing that I'm telling you. And it gets into our children's minds, it gets into, everybody's minds actually, but more so they go after the youth. We should all live in peace under a world government. That's their push. Hillary Clinton even said that in her private, roundabout, almost exact words, live in peace under one world government, in her private banking speeches. And forget about such selfish things as nationalities and patriotism. They want open borders and everyone to live happily ever after. Not. We can solve our own problems. We do not need God, as they say, or morals or values. It's all relative anyway, right? Not. Because if we actually had some moral character and values, we might be able to discern that these people are actually evil. And they are evil. Extremely evil. The Bible says, and this is for me, give me 1 second. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. 1 Timothy 6:10. These people are evil because they love money and power, and greed drives them to do anything to achieve their goals. They have lost all morality and conscience and believe such concepts, as well as our Constitution, is outdated. You hear these words even from that of Barack Obama himself, Hillary Clinton, and the like. They have no conscience. That makes them narcissistic and sociopathic. And hence, as I say, the God complex. That is insanity. To have more wealth than can be spent, and still it's never enough. When is it enough? When is it enough? How many more lives have to be destroyed? How many more countries have to be destroyed? How many more innocent civilians have to be killed from senseless wars? How many more people in the United States have to lose their, live in fear? They have to control governments, start wars, conspire to rule the world. At least the common people wake up to how they have gained their wealth. Take it away from them and demand that they pay the price for their crimes. We need to stand up and demand and educate and make it clear that the people will not take this anymore. The common people, us, the deplorables, the rednecks, the basement dwellers, the bottom feeders, the common folk. Educate yourself. Listen to how they have made their wealth, and listen and get wise to how they manipulate us. And don't allow the media and the government to manipulate you anymore. Take the power away from them. The people, we, the common folk, can take the power away from them. And we must demand that they pay the price for their crimes, just like Hillary Clinton must pay for her crimes. And she has serious crimes. Serious crimes tied with that of Barack Obama, of war criminals. They should be tried at The Hague. They should be exposed for what they have done and what they still continue to do. And now you're going to see the Russians and Putin paying a price, which could lead to World War III. And as McCain and the likes yesterday said, this is like some big game to them. And McCain is a CFM member, tied with the Rothschilds, and there are many others like him in the shadow government within our own Senate and Congress. Whether it be Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter. They're all there. Not everyone, but they're all within those branches. And CIA, NSA, you name it. That is why they constantly pit us against one another with diversity. That's why I discuss it all the time. We shouldn't be at a point where our diversity is that of still of race, religion, sex. That they do it deliberately. They pit us against each other in a big fight to create this problem. Affirmative action and other plans, blacks against whites, men against women, rural against urban, ranchers against environmentalists, and on and on and on. Anything to look in their direction for that, then you have these Black Lives Matters and all that. All lives matter. Okay, and Black Lives Matters is funded by the Zionists and Council of Foreign Relations and that of the Clinton Foundation and the likes. They're all tied together. We, the people, are held to a much higher standard than they are. And you saw proof of that 1,000%, how Hillary Clinton and her cohorts, Abedin and the likes, were given complete immunity and never charged with a crime with her email server and the like that goes with it. If we threaten the president or a public official, we are charged with a crime. Yet the One World Gang can threaten the Constitution and the liberties of we the people, the sovereign rules of this nation, and nothing is said or done. Nothing happens to these people. Nothing. Perhaps they don't fear what man can do to them. They believe they have arranged everything and their power and wealth will prevail in this world. However, those among them who have sworn an oath before God to uphold and defend the Constitution, the President, members of Congress, the military, may find one day that they do indeed have something to fear. Us, the people. And they should be in fear of the people. Because if the people rise up and the people wise up and then rise up, they're finished. You can no longer live in fear. You need to learn, educate, help educate others, educate your children. Don't follow its children are so important, and the youth and the millennials as well, which turn to millennials. It is so important that our children are educated with the truth, which they cut out of our school system. Anything that of the truth, even having to do with our Civil War, our own history and the creation of the United States. It's like they don't want it to exist. They don't want it to exist. The spirit of 1776. List of CFR members. Colonel House, the fallen angel, still has relatives controlling the CFR. Karen Elliott House is chairman of the membership committee and a member of the nominating committee. Along with Gene Kirkpatrick, David Rockefeller is now honorary chairman of the board after serving as chairman from 1970 to 1985 and director emeritus after serving as director 1949 to 1985. Peter G. Peterson is chairman. Admiral B.R. Inman is vice chairman, while Thomas Foley and Gene Kirkpatrick are directors serving on the executive committee. I have an updated list as well. I'm going to put it under this when it's done, and it gets saved in the feed below it. You're going to see I'm going to give you a lot of links, a lot of attachments, some photos in there as well for your reference to all of this. These private citizens have access to government officials and policymakers often as they wish, yet the results of their meetings can only be given to other government officials, corporate officers, or law partners. Participants are forbidden to transmit and attribute statement to any public medium such as newspapers or TV where there is risk that it will promptly be widely circulated or published as the annual report puts it. This is the shadow government. Should not our public offices be forbidden to meet in secret with private groups? Public officials should only be a few others tied with this. Joe Lieberman. Okay? Joe Lieberman is, as I said, the Rothschild's key man here. John McCain is another one. Joe Lieberman and John McCain are like this. You have these, they're Zionist, Masonic overlords, and, dangerous. I know McCain, they're like, he's nobody, he's this. No, McCain has access to heavy duty New World Order people. And that's why people, they said yesterday when I was listening to them, you had to listen. People listen to what I'm telling you. When people speak, listen. They'll tell you everything you want to know about them or their future plans. As I just said, they would even announce to the American people they're not to be taken as just some fools. These people have access and are part of something much bigger, as I just explained to you. Somebody's telling me that Facebook is down, but March for America is not. Facebook just cut us off. I'm on live stream, still streaming here. You can jump on here. I can't help if Facebook stops our video. That's just so you all know that. I'm commenting on that. Give me 1 second. I'm still streaming live. That's why I tell people to and people need to like and share on Facebook. It's very important that you like and share and get the word out, even from our posts of news and the like. We are in the middle of building a very nice, incredible website for MFA and MFA Underground with our own forum in the back end. Now this is our new TV network on here, which is going to, starting end of next week, be shown out to 55 to 100,000 viewers. I'm not talking about Facebook people now. I'm talking about around the world. I will be having guests. You're going to be seeing a different setup and forum in here, green screen technology and the like as well. people are trying to share live stream on Facebook, and that's the wrong link. Let me get everybody the link here. Give me a second. This way people get it, and I want them to have the right link. I'm trying to give everybody the link, and they can't hear me. If you guys can hear me here, maybe you can share the link to them out there. Yeah, I see everybody. It's come back up then. So now, we'll get used to this. The rest is up to Facebook. That's why I tell you to join here on live stream. You can comment on Facebook. I can open the comments here, which I'll probably do at the end a little bit. But I haven't been doing that because I want to be focusing on this channel for what it is, and it's going to be seen more and more pro. And like I said, bring incredible guests on and the like to get information out to the world. Now, I'm going to tell you something. Everybody heard of this site, realjewnews.com? If you do, go to www.realjewnews.com. He's also a very big, John McCain is bought by the Rothschilds. Fact. Bought by the Rothschilds. Joe Lieberman is their head. Bill Clinton, Rothschilds, CFR member. George Bush. The list is endless. Now I want to tell you something about John McCain and how his father sold out America. Okay? As well as what everybody, And if you notice, Donald Trump made comments about him being a war criminal. And it got big news and that about him being a POW, and he said, good soldiers don't get captured. I was a little I don't agree with that. Anything can happen. Pilots can be shot down and whatever. But there's a reason for his sort of anger with that of McCain. And as I told you in the beginning of this video, understand this. There's a difference between that of the Jewish people and that of a Zionist Jew. There are two different people. McCain's deceptions, treachery extend back many years. Virtually his whole life is one big fabrication. Yes, he was a POW, but after he returned from Vietnam, McCain is the dirty rat who sold out the remaining POWs in captivity, just so you know this. He and his liberal Senator Swiftboat John Kerry, just so you know, and John Kerry is part of this as well and tied to the Rothschilds. They even engineered favored trading status for their erstwhile communist friends back in Hanoi. Okay? Yeah, Jane Fonda, move over. Hanoi Jane, move over. Still a joke. They sold out, John Kerry, John McCain sold out to the communists back in Hanoi, just so you know that. McCain's father, Naval Admiral John McCain, was even a greater fraud. He's the guy whose cowardice, lies, and incompetence as commanding officer of Pacific Forces doomed thousands of American troops to misery and death during the tragic Vietnam War. This is a fact. The senior McCain also just happens to be the sorry traitor who stood by and let Israel bomber aircraft disseminate the U.S. Liberty ship in 1967, killing and wounding so many of our sailors. Sound familiar? There is a huge love fest between McCain and Clinton, and there's no difference between the two of them. And this is why you see McCain coming after Trump as well. And his words yesterday were, are something to pay attention to. I'd say yesterday, sorry, I'm different. I'm late night now, so it's 2:58 in the morning. McCain has promised to nuke Iran. He's been dying to nuke Iran for God knows how long. He's insane. He truly is insane. That would mean thousands of U.S. fighting men and women brought into another conflict and nuclear war on this planet don't get me wrong. Eliminating North Korea, Iran, and the like sounds good in pretense, and do they deserve it because of their evil? Yeah, possibly not. But do the innocent people deserve that? No. But what it would do is ring in even greater war if we nuke Iran and North Korea in that large scale anyway. It would entail the entire world viewing America as a heartless, savage beast nation to do what John McCain and Hillary Clinton and the likes want to do. We're supposed to be about peace. We're supposed to be about operating from strength. But Barack Obama and the likes, that, and even Secretary Clinton, we have depleted our military. We have depleted our power to negotiate. And Donald Trump wants to build that power back up. And when you negotiate from a position of strength, that's how you get it. That's how Reagan got Gorbachev. And they took down that wall. That was huge. And the only way that happened was Reagan negotiating from a position of strength. Now, I want to give you some inside facts on McCain because it's important, because McCain, you're going to see in the next coming week plus, is going to be playing a big role along with John Kerry and a few others in several areas here. He is a man who got into the military academy because his grandfather and father before him were military brass and pulled strings. McCain finished almost dead last in his graduating class. He's not very smart. He never accomplished one positive thing as a naval aviator. He did, however, manage to execute a miserably incompetent, faulty landing that killed a number of carrier personnel, and later he was shot down over North Vietnam. Not an exact picture of success, and this is what Donald Trump was sort of referring to because he knew McCain's history when he made that comment. John McCain has never done an honest day's work in the private sector in his entire life. He cheated on his first wife with a much younger Cindy Hensley, then abruptly divorced his wife and married the pretty Cindy within a few weeks. Now come reliable news reports about McCain messing around and having an affair with a young woman in D.C., a blonde lobbyist, Vicky Eisman, a real family values guy, wouldn't you say? McCain is so vile that other senators have labeled him President McNasty. McCain has threatened to reduce Social Security benefits, and he consistently voted as a senator for higher taxes. One more time. New World Order, Council of Foreign Affairs. And McCain's not the only one in there, senator as part of Council of Foreign Relations, and or congressman. His World War III insanity will bankrupt America and force this nation into a North American Union slave state. And if you don't know what the North American Union is, that's the globalist plan to take Canada, the United States, and Mexico and merge it just like the EU in Europe, which we see that is a complete failure. As you even see over 1 million refugees into Germany, you see it's a nightmare. The EU is it's horrible. Their globalist plan is like a big failure. But then, if you think about it, why should McCain even care about you and me and other middle-class Americans or like? Why? He married into the Hensley fortune. Cindy Rich's dad owned a beer distributing company, and reportedly got its fortune in unsavory ties with the Jewish mafia, and there's other. That's what I'm going to get into in a minute. With the Hensley fortune, there is a Jewish mafia, and I, growing up in the Italian mafia, can tell you that this is correct, and they are very serious people, and to be taken very serious. And McCain is, tied therewith. Bottom line, he's a hothead. He is a globalist, and he's going to play a very big part in this Russian hack, false flag, and in this Senate committee. So understand this. And he talked about going to war with Russia, or the like. All right, guys, thank you for joining me. I want to thank you for all your donations. Thank you for all your help. Thank you. Please like our Facebook page. There's a link in the description in this video, in this event, on the show. You can also visit our shop, mfa.org. Thank you very much. We have an inauguration event coming up in 16 days in Washington. You'll be seeing me, you'll seeing our team and volunteers be putting up a landing page, I think tonight, tomorrow morning, somewhere in there. The event is already created in Facebook. If you can get to DC, it's very important to support our president. I want to thank everybody who has donated to us and helped us and gotten MFA this far. I look forward to the next steps that we're enacting in our news network and all the different divisions with MFA for kids, MFA for pets, the MFA underground. It's very, very important that we as citizens from around the world, not just in America, keep educating one another and praying as well to fight against this new world order and globalism, as well as the serious corruption that is riddled not just in the United States but throughout many countries in the world. If you look at Venezuela right now, Venezuela is a blueprint, and i.e. the result of a blueprint of the globalists to wreak havoc on Venezuela. They're fighting in the streets over controlled food right now. And it's throughout the country. This is not some small event. Venezuela is on its knees. People, humans, souls should not be pawns and chess pieces in a big, sick, sadistic power game for the elite. Think about that. We should not be, and we should no longer allow ourselves to be. And I can assure you I will not, and I've stood up myself to public corruption and the like, and it doesn't matter what anybody throws out there or does whatever. As I said, the truth is always the truth. It's time to make America great again. It's time to make the world great again and to stop this madness. It's time to stop this madness and stand up to these people. And this is only the beginning. This is going to be a long, drawn-out effort, and it's going to take very good people and good, solid citizens and patriots to make this come about. Thank you. Good night. God bless.